Hey guys, it's Shawn. Today we're going to dig into liquidated damages provisions, and we're really going to start talking about the benefits of it. So, for those of you who have been following the channel, we've talked about liquidated damages a little bit. I'll give a quick overview here in the beginning. We'll talk about what some of the benefits are, and then we'll conclude by talking about whether they're right for you and whether they should be put into your agreements. So, for those of you who haven't seen the prior videos, just a quick kind of background on liquidated damages. The idea is that you can put a clause into a contract or agreement that says a certain amount is to be paid if the agreement is breached as damages. This is what they call liquidated damages. The idea is to take damages and put it into a number certain. This tells you what the amount is going to be. This is good because it helps both parties know what the damages are. Now, that damages amount cannot be a penalty. It has to be an amount that is reasonable to estimate what the damages might be without going through all the calculations. So most courts will not allow a liquidated damages that is a penalty provision. You can't use it as a punitive thing. It has to be to reimburse the non-breaching party for whatever happened, right? So the contract's broken, the non-breaching party, they need to be paid to be made whole, and that liquidated damages amount is used to estimate that. So, what are the benefits of this? Well, for one thing, it gives everybody a lot of certainty. Damages can be very uncertain, and they can be very difficult to calculate, particularly in a business context, right? So, let's say one business doesn't supply something to another business and it delays a project. Okay, well, the project delay may have a cost to it, right? That may cause, in turn, a breach of another contract, right? So the person who's completing the project, they may get delayed, they may blow a deadline. So that's one potential damage of that. But then the reputation costs, the lost business, the lost opportunities, the fact that people may not be able to work while the product is not delivered, right? So you can start seeing how, in a business context in particular, this damages starts to multiply and go out. And it can be very, very difficult to work through and calculate, right? In fact, that's an entire phase of some litigation. In some litigation cases, the court will actually separate the fault on the contract and the damages phase, right? So they'll say, let's do two separate parts of the trial. First, let's have the judge or jury figure out whether the contract was breached. And then if we get to that point, then we're going to do a whole separate trial on damages because it can be that complex. And so there could be a lot of time and energy, a lot of calculations, potentially experts, expert fees. A lot can go into calculating damages. So one of the real benefits of a liquidated damages clause is you can get a dollar amount put into a contract so you know what the damages number is, they know what the damages number is. This now allows everybody to make a calculation. What is the cost of breaching? What will be the downstream effect? It gives a lot more certainty. But on the flip side is you have to calculate this number in advance. So you're sitting there the day you sign the contract and you're making essentially a projection of what the likely damages will be. Of course, the problem with projection is you don't know whether you're going to be right or wrong. You could come up short. Let's say you're the one that sets the number, you put a number in a contract, there's a breach, but then the circumstances have changed at the time the contract's breached, or there's been inflation or other factors. Now maybe you have a lot of damages. Maybe you did lose some big contracts because of the breach, and you didn't anticipate that at the time the contract was signed. So there can be a downside to it. But avoiding that phase of damages, bringing in the expert witnesses, all that uncertainty, regardless of which side you're on, that helps a lot. And that's one of the reasons why people see a lot of benefit to a liquidated damages clause, because you know what you're dealing with. And certainty is very, very important in business, right? And especially when we're trying to make decisions. If we're sitting here making a decision, and let's say you're in the situation where you might have to breach. Maybe you had disruptions at your plant. Maybe you've had problems with your employees. Maybe you have other contracts that have come in that you want to prioritize that may be very, very lucrative. And you say, okay, well, I'm going to do the lucrative contracts. I'll let this smaller contract slide for a bit. The problem is, from that decision-making standpoint, if you're on the side where you might be the person breaching, not knowing what the other side's potential damages are could be a real problem. You could set off a chain of events that they potentially could claim a very big number. Of course, they would eventually have to prove it, and there would be a trial if we went all the way through litigation. There might be experts and testimony and counter testimony. There could be a lot that happens there, but that could be very expensive to develop, and you could still end up in a place that you never anticipated. So the safer course is to know what the amounts are. And on the other side, if you're the party setting the contract up and you're putting the liquidated damage provision in there, knowing how much you're going to get paid, to not have to think about developing an economic model to prove your damages and to work through it, that can be very beneficial for you too. So there's a lot of pluses to it. And the downside really is just having to lock yourself in and then not being able to see where things are at the time of the breach of contract. But remember too, with contracts, even if there's a breach and you go to full-on litigation, it's going to have to wind its way through the court system. So you could be a year, 2 years, or more after this potential breach of contract before you're getting paid. So shortening that time cycle of getting paid sooner through potentially a liquidated damages provision, because you don't have to develop the damages phase of the litigation and trial, may speed up the litigation if it would happen. And that may mean getting paid sooner. And that certainly has a real benefit in business, because we have a lot of situations where people are anticipating a judgment, they're anticipating a win in litigation, they still have the uncertainty of not knowing. But not only do they have the uncertainty, they're not getting paid. So liquidated damages provision might move you a little bit faster to getting paid, although there's no guarantee, but it takes a little bit of the complexity out of potential litigation. Of course, there might be litigation about whether the liquidated damage provision was valid, whether it was properly done, whether it was a reasonable estimate, assuming that your state holds to that standard, right? So there can be a lot of uncertainty. So it's stuff that your litigation counsel will work through with you. But when you're in the drafting phase, thinking about going ahead and getting that down could really be a benefit for you. So if you're thinking about and you're building important contracts, particularly complex commercial contracts, I have to say I recommend thinking about a liquidated damages provision. It's a good idea to at least consider whether you want to put it in there, depending on your situation. Go ahead and boil it down to a number, give yourself that certainty, know what's going to happen in a potential litigation, and start moving forward from them. There. Questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. Look forward to seeing what you have to say. Don't put anything confidential there. Other people may see your questions and comments, so keep it very general, very open-ended, not about you, your company, your specific situation. Also, if you have suggestions for future videos, go ahead and drop them below. You'll find we have a whole library of past videos here on the channel. You may want to go check it out. You might want to consider subscribing to some of our upcoming videos. Thanks for tuning in today, folks. Look forward to seeing you for another video soon.